Everything seemed normal at first. Trump smiling, radiating that unmistakable confidence he's known for. Ivanka sitting beside him, calm, composed, the picture of grace and control. But across from them, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, her eyes focused, her demeanor steady. She was ready to expose a secret so shocking, so earth-shattering, that by the end of the show, no one in that studio, no one watching from home, would ever be the same. Especially Trump and Ivanka. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. The bright studio lights flooded the stage with a brilliant golden glow, illuminating every corner of the set. The cameras began to roll, their red recording lights blinking steadily. The audience, packed into the studio seats, erupted into enthusiastic applause as the moment they'd been waiting for finally arrived. His supporters, Trump's confidence wasn't just visible, it was palpable. You could feel it radiating from him, filling the studio like an invisible force. He lifted his chin even higher, flashed that trademark grin one more time, and took his seat with the kind of ease that only comes from decades of being in the spotlight. Beside him, Ivanka glided in. Where Trump's entrance was bold and boisterous, hers was quiet and graceful. She moved with the kind of polished elegance that looked effortless but was clearly the result of years of practice. Her smile was perfectly fixed, not too wide, not too subtle, just enough to convey warmth without revealing too much. She sat down with precision, crossing her legs neatly, her posture impeccable. To anyone watching, she looked like the epitome of calm and control. Every detail of her appearance, from her carefully styled hair to her designer outfit, screamed perfection. She was the picture-perfect daughter, the loyal supporter, the woman who had stood by her father through thick and thin, but beneath that polished exterior there was something else, something harder to name, a stillness that felt almost unnatural, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that the cameras couldn't fully capture but was there nonetheless. The host, eager and enthusiastic, leaned forward with a warm smile, ready to break the ice and set the tone for what was supposed to be a friendly, light-hearted conversation. "Mr. Trump," the host began, his voice smooth and inviting, "tonight, millions of people are watching from all over the world. You've faced so many challenges over the years, public scrutiny, political battles, media attacks. Through it all, you've remained strong. Tell us, what keeps you going? What's your source of strength?" It was the perfect question for Trump, the kind of question that allowed him to do what he does best. Talk about himself, his achievements, his family, his legacy. He leaned forward toward the microphone, his eyes sweeping across the audience once more. When he spoke, his voice came out strong and steady, carrying the weight of rehearsed confidence. "Family," Trump said, nodding slowly as if the word itself held all the answers. "My family keeps me going. They've always been my strength. Ivanka, Barron, all of them. The most loyal, the most amazing, the best anyone could ask for. I've been blessed, truly blessed, to have such incredible people by my side." The crowd erupted into applause again, this time even louder. Trump's smile widened. He thumped the desk lightly with his fist, nodding along as if to say, "See, that's the truth. That's the real story." The audience ate it up. They clapped, they cheered, they nodded in agreement. To them, this was exactly what they came to see, Trump being Trump, speaking with confidence, talking about family, loyalty, and strength. Ivanka's smile didn't budge. She looked at her father, then back to the crowd, her face remaining perfectly composed. To the cameras, it looked like a proud daughter supporting her father, basking in the warmth of his praise. But under those heavy studio lights, her stillness carried something else. Something the audience couldn't quite put their finger on yet, something unspoken. And then there was Jasmine Crockett. She sat on the opposite side of the stage, quiet and patient. She didn't clap when the audience clapped. She didn't nod when Trump praised his family. She didn't smile or react or give any indication that she was moved by his words. Instead, her eyes, sharp, steady, unwavering, stayed locked on him. She watched him like a hawk watches its prey, waiting, calculating, preparing for the perfect moment to strike. Trump, however, was completely in his element. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed and confident, enjoying the rhythm of his own words. He gestured with his hands, punctuating his points with that familiar Trump flair. "When you're a leader," he continued, his voice growing even more animated, "you have to be strong. People look at your family to know who you are. And my family, my children, my loyalty, my values. That's what defines me. That's what America sees. That's what the world sees." The audience clapped again. Trump gave his familiar hand wave, the kind that said, "Case closed." Enough said. We all know the truth, but in truth the case wasn't closed. It hadn't even begun. Because while Trump spoke with pride, while the audience applauded, While Ivanka sat smiling that perfect smile, Jasmine Crockett sat silently with a different kind of confidence. She wasn't impressed, she wasn't moved by the speech, she wasn't buying any of it. She knew something no one else in that room was prepared to hear, and she wasn't going to keep it hidden much longer. The host glanced over at Jasmine, sensing her silence, noticing the way she sat so still while everyone else reacted, but he kept the spotlight on Trump a little longer. It was easy television after all. Trump talking about family, the audience loving every second of it. Ivanka smiling like everything was perfect, it was safe, it was comfortable, it was what everyone expected. Yet, beneath the surface, the perfect picture had cracks. Small ones, invisible to most. The way Ivanka avoided direct eye contact when her father said Barron's name, the way her fingers tightened ever so slightly against the armrest of her chair, the way her breathing seemed just a fraction too controlled, too measured, and above all, the way Jasmine's calm expression seemed to say, without words, I know the truth, and soon everyone else will too. The energy in the studio began to shift, slowly at first. The applause softened. The cheers became quieter. Attention, quiet but heavy, started to settle in the room like a thick fog. The audience didn't know why, but they could feel it. Something was building. Something was about to happen. Trump, of course, didn't notice. He was too busy painting his story, too caught up in his own narrative, too focused on the image he was presenting to the world. He didn't see Jasmine's unwavering stare. He didn't notice Ivanka's tight smile. He didn't pick up on the way the crowd's excitement had slowly, almost imperceptibly, turned into anticipation. He kept going. America needs strong families, Trump declared, his voice booming with conviction. And nobody has a stronger family than mine. And right there, in that very moment, Jasmine leaned forward slightly, just enough to signal that she was ready, just enough to show that the silence was about to break. The audience didn't know what was coming. Trump didn't know what was coming. Ivanka probably did, which is exactly why she stayed so perfectly still, so unnaturally composed. But Jasmine knew, and the bombshell she was about to drop would turn that proud speech, that confident declaration, into the spark that lit a fire. No one could put out. The applause was still fading, echoing softly through the studio. When Jasmine Crockett finally leaned forward, until now she had been silent, her hands resting calmly on the table, her posture relaxed yet commanding, her eyes locked on Trump with the kind of focus that could cut through steel. The host was about to transition to the next topic, probably something lighter, something easier, when Jasmine's voice cut through the air like a blade, steady, sharp, impossible to ignore. Mr. Trump, she began, her tone not loud but carrying a weight that demanded attention. Every head in the room turned toward her, every eye locked onto her face. You talk a lot about strength, about honesty, about how your family defines you. But the problem is, that story isn't as honest as you make it sound. The studio went quiet, not the comfortable kind of quiet that comes during a pause in conversation. This was different. This was the kind of silence that feels heavy, suffocating, the kind that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. No one expected her to speak like that. Not on live TV, not to Donald Trump. Trump blinked, thrown for just a second. His expression shifted. Confusion, then disbelief, then the beginning of anger. But he was quick to recover. He always was. He leaned forward, squinting at her like he was trying to make sense of what she'd just said. Excuse me? His voice was sharp, defensive. My family's the strongest. Everyone knows it. Don't start with nonsense. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't back down. She didn't even blink. Her calmness was almost unnerving, like she'd been preparing for this exact moment her entire life. See, that's exactly it, she said, her voice still steady. You present one picture to the public. The perfect father, the perfect children, the perfect loyalty. But what if the truth is different? What if you've been hiding something very real, something about your own family? Trump, like he was watching a tennis match he couldn't control. He was caught between keeping control of the show and letting the tension unfold. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, red, tight-jawed, his usual confidence cracking around the edges like glass under pressure. And then Jasmine asked the question that froze the entire room. Why don't you tell them who Barron's real mother is? The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The audience gasped audibly, some covering their mouths, others whispering furiously to each other. The sound of shuffling chairs filled the studio. People leaned forward in their seats, straining to hear, straining to understand what they'd just heard. Trump slammed his hand on the desk so hard the microphone shook. His voice rose, loud and angry, echoing through the studio. "How dare you!" he shouted. "That is a disgusting lie. You don't know what you're talking about. Shameful. Absolutely shameful." But the more he shouted, the calmer Jasmine became. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue back. She just watched him, letting his rage fill the room, letting it speak for itself. And in that moment, her silence was louder than his shouting. She reached down beside her chair and pulled out a folder. It wasn't thick, but it looked official, crisp, organized, deliberate. She placed it on the table in front of her with a soft thud that somehow felt louder than Trump's fist slamming the desk. "This," she said, tapping the folder lightly, "is proof." The audience went silent again. Even Trump stopped shouting. He stared at the folder like it was a bomb that had just been placed in front of him. Jasmine opened it slowly, deliberately, making sure every movement was visible to the cameras. She pulled out a document, clean, official-looking, and held it up for everyone to see. "These are medical records," she said calmly. "Legal documents, DNA reports, all pointing to one truth that has been hidden for years." Trump's face turned redder, his jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscles twitching. "Lies!" he spat. "Those are doctored. You can make anything up these days. Photoshop, fake signatures, fake DNA. This is garbage." But Jasmine didn't flinch. She turned toward the cameras, raising her voice just enough for the entire audience at home to hear every word clearly. "These documents are verified. They have been cross-checked, signed, and notarized. This isn't gossip. This is fact. And the fact is this: Ivanka Trump is Barron's real mother." The room exploded. Gasps filled the air, so loud they drowned out the host's attempt to regain control. The audience members clutched their mouths, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others whispering frantically to the people next to them. A few even stood up from their seats, unable to contain their shock. Trump stood up, pointing a finger directly at Jasmine, his face redder than ever. "How dare you!" he shouted. "This is an attack on my family, on my children. You should be ashamed of yourself. Shut her mic off. Shut it off right now." But the mic stayed on. The cameras stayed rolling. And Ivanka, pale as a ghost, sat frozen. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her eyes darted toward the folder, then back to Jasmine. She looked like she wanted to deny it, to fight back, to say something, anything. But something held her still. It was the weight of the documents, the weight of the truth. If you were in Donald Trump's shoes right now, facing a moment like this on live television, what would you do? Would you fight back? Stay silent? Deny everything? Share your thoughts in the comments? The host tried again to step in, his voice shaking slightly. "Miss Crockett, this is an extraordinary claim," but Jasmine cut him off, her voice calm and unwavering. "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And tonight I've brought it." She held up another document, this one with more details visible. "These papers show the timeline, the medical proof, the legal signatures. Trump's story about his family isn't what he says it is, and the people deserve to know." The audience gasped again, louder this time. Some even clapped, not out of joy, but out of shock that someone had dared to confront Trump with this level of boldness, with this level of preparation. Trump, now trembling with rage, slammed both hands on the desk. "This is illegal! You'll pay for this! You and everyone who spreads these lies will regret it. I'll sue you. I'll sue this network. I'll sue everyone." But Jasmine didn't even look at him anymore. She turned back to the cameras and spoke directly to the viewers watching at home, her voice clear and strong. "This isn't about destroying anyone, it's about truth. Leaders cannot ask for trust while hiding their deepest secrets. If we are to hold power accountable, then no lie, no matter how personal, can be protected." The studio erupted into chaos, Trump yelling, his face contorted with fury, Ivanka silent, her body rigid, her eyes glassy, the host overwhelmed, looking between his notes and the producers frantically signaling from off stage, the audience buzzing like a storm, unable to process what they were witnessing. But Jasmine sat calm, her papers still in her hands, her message hanging heavy in the air. The truth was no longer whispered in private conversations or hidden behind closed doors. It was right there, on live TV, for the entire world to see, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could put it back in the box. The cameras zoomed in on Ivanka. For the first time all night, her composure cracked, just slightly. A single tear rolled down her cheek, though she quickly wiped it away. Her breathing became visible, short, shallow, like she was trying to hold herself together by sheer willpower alone. Trump noticed. He turned to her, his anger momentarily replaced by something else. Concern? Panic? It was hard to tell, but for just a second he looked less like the confident leader and more like a man watching his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. "Ivanka," he said, his voice softer now but still laced with urgency, "don't listen to this. It's lies, all lies." But Ivanka didn't respond. She just stared at the folder on the table, her eyes locked onto it like it held the answers to questions she'd been avoiding her entire life. Jasmine, sensing the shift, leaned forward once more. "Ivanka," she said gently, addressing her directly for the first time, You don't have to carry this alone anymore. The truth doesn't make you weak. Hiding it does. The words hung in the air like a lifeline. For a moment, it seemed like Ivanka might respond. Her lips parted, her eyes flickered toward Jasmine. But then she closed her mouth, shook her head slightly, and looked away. Trump exploded again. Don't you dare talk to her! Don't you dare try to manipulate my daughter! Jasmine didn't react to his outburst. Instead, she continued speaking, her voice steady and measured. This isn't manipulation, Mr. Trump. This is accountability. And whether you accept it or not, the truth is out now. The documents are real. The timeline matches. The evidence is verified. She paused, then looked directly into the camera. And for everyone watching at home, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about one family or one secret. This is about power, about control, about the lengths people will go to protect an image, even when that image is built on lies. The audience was transfixed. Some were nodding, others were shaking their heads in disbelief, but no one was looking away. No one could. Trump, realizing he was losing control of the narrative, tried a different approach. His voice became quieter, almost pleading. This is my family, my private life. You have no right. Your private life became public the moment you asked. For public trust, Jasmine interrupted. You can't stand on a stage and talk about family values, about honesty, about strength, and then hide something this significant. You can't build a political career on transparency and accountability and expect people to look the other way when the truth comes out. She folded her hands on top of the folder and looked at him with something that almost resembled pity. This was always going to come out, Mr. Trump. Secrets like this, they don't stay buried forever. The only question was when, and tonight the answer is now. The host, finally finding his voice again, tried to bring some order to the chaos. We need to take a commercial break. We'll be right back after. No, Jasmine said firmly. Don't cut the cameras. Let them roll. Let people see this. Let them hear the truth. The host looked at the producers. The producers looked at each other, and then, against all protocol, against everything they'd planned, they made a decision. The cameras stayed on. The broadcast continued. Because they knew, just like everyone else in that studio, that they were witnessing history. The studio had become a pressure cooker. Every second felt longer than the last. Trump's voice thundered across the stage, demanding control, demanding respect, demanding that someone, anyone, shut this down, but no one moved to help him. The cameras kept rolling, the audience kept watching, and Jasmine Crockett kept speaking. Let me be clear about something, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I didn't come here for ratings or attention. I came here because the American people deserve to know the truth about the leaders they trust, the leaders they follow, the leaders they put their faith in, Trump scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, please, you came here for attention. You wanted your 15 minutes of fame, and you thought attacking my family would get it for you? Jasmine didn't take the bait. She simply looked at him, her expression unchanged. Mr. Trump, I've been doing this work for years. I don't need 15 minutes. I need accountability. And right now, you're refusing to give it. She turned back to the folder, pulling out another document. This one looked different. Official seals, signatures, dates clearly visible even from a distance. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail. This is a birth certificate, Jasmine explained, holding it up for everyone to see. It lists the mother of Barron Trump, and it's not who you've been telling the world it is. The audience erupted again. Whispers turned into full conversations. People pulled out their phones, texting, tweeting, sharing what they were witnessing in real time. The energy in the room had shifted completely. What started as a friendly interview had turned into an interrogation, a trial, a reckoning. Trump stood again, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You forged that. You had to. There's no way. It's not forged, Jasmine said calmly. It's registered with the state. It has official stamps. It has verification codes. Anyone with access to public records can confirm what I'm showing you right now. She set the document down and pulled out yet another one. And this is a DNA test, conducted by an independent lab, cross-referenced with multiple samples. The results are conclusive? Trump's face went from red to almost purple. His hands were shaking. You had no right to obtain those records. This is illegal. This is... Public figures forfeit certain privacies, Mr. Trump. You know that. You've been in the public eye long enough to understand how this works. Jasmine's voice was steady, relentless. And when those public figures build their entire image on family values, on honesty, on trust, the public has a right to know when that image is a lie. Ivanka finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but the microphone picked it up. This isn't fair. Everyone turned to look at her. Her eyes were red, her face pale, her composure barely holding together. This isn't fair, she repeated louder this time. You're putting my private life on display. You're making me into a spectacle." Jasmine's expression softened slightly. She looked at Ivanka with something that resembled compassion. "I understand this is hard. I do. But the truth isn't cruel, Ivanka. Hiding it is. And you've been carrying this secret for how long? Years? Decades? Don't you think it's time to let it go?" Ivanka shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to live under this kind of pressure, to have every part of your life scrutinized, to have people make assumptions about who you are based on. Based on lies?" Jasmine finished gently. "I do understand, Ivanka, more than you think, and I'm not your enemy here. But the lie is, the secret is, and as long as it stays hidden, it controls you." The audience was silent now, captivated by the exchange. This wasn't just about Trump anymore. This was about Ivanka, about the weight she'd been carrying, about the truth she'd been forced to hide. Trump, seeing his daughter break down, seemed to deflate slightly. His anger was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Helplessness, fear, the realization that he couldn't control this narrative anymore. "This is my daughter," he said, his voice quieter but still defiant. "Whatever you think you know, whatever documents you think you have, you're tearing my family apart on national television." Jasmine looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "I'm not tearing your family apart, Mr. Trump. The lie already did that. I'm just showing people what's been hidden." She picked up the folder again, holding it carefully. "These aren't just pieces of paper. These are proof of deception, proof of manipulation, proof that the image you've sold to millions of people, the strong family, the loyal children, the perfect patriarch, was built on a foundation of lies." The host, still struggling to process everything, finally managed to ask a question. "Miss Crockett, what do you hope to achieve with this revelation?" Jasmine turned to him, grateful for the question. "I hope to achieve truth. I hope to show people that no one, no matter how powerful, no matter how famous, no matter how convincing, is above accountability. Leaders lie, politicians lie, and when they do, it's our responsibility to expose those lies, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us." She looked back at the camera, speaking directly to the millions watching. "For too long, we've accepted that public figures can say one thing and do another. We've accepted that they can preach values they don't live by. We've accepted that their private lives are off limits, even when those private lives directly contradict the image they present to the world." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But that acceptance has to end, because every time we look the other way, every time we give them a pass, we're telling them it's okay to lie. We're telling them they can get away with it. And they do, over and over again." The audience began to clap, slowly at first, then louder, then thunderous. Not everyone was clapping. Some still looked shocked, others conflicted, but enough people were that the sound filled the studio. Trump watched in disbelief. His own audience, the people who had cheered for him just minutes ago, were now applauding the woman who had just exposed his deepest secret. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. What do you think about Jasmine's approach? Was she right to expose this secret, or should some things stay private? The applause continued, echoing through the studio like waves crashing against a shore. Trump stood frozen, his mind racing, trying to figure out how to regain control. But there was no controlling this anymore. The truth was out. The documents were verified. The audience had made their choice. Jasmine set the folder down and folded her hands on top of it. Her expression was serious, but there was a hint of relief in her eyes. She'd done what she came to do. The rest was up to the world. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice softer now but still firm, "I want to be clear about something. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't have a vendetta against your family, but I believe in accountability. And I believe that when someone stands in front of the American people and asks for their trust, their votes, their support, they have an obligation to be honest." Trump finally sat back down, his shoulders slumped. For the first time all night, he looked defeated. "You've destroyed my family," he said quietly. "You've humiliated my daughter. You've turned my life into a circus. Your life was already a circus, Mr. Trump," Jasmine replied. "The difference is, now people know the truth about it." She turned to Ivanka, her expression gentle. "Ivanka, I know this is painful. I know you probably feel betrayed, exposed, vulnerable. But I want you to know something. You are not defined by this secret. You are not defined by the lies you were asked to keep. You are so much more than that." Ivanka looked up at her, tears still streaming down her face. "Then why did you do this? If you understand how painful it is, why did you expose it?" Because the truth matters more than comfort, Jasmine said simply. Because secrets like this, they don't just hurt you. They hurt everyone who trusted the lie. They hurt the people who believed in the image your family presented. They hurt democracy itself. She paused, choosing her words carefully. And because I believe you deserve to be free from it. You've carried this burden for so long. Don't you want to be able to live your life without constantly worrying that someone will find out? Don't you want to be able to tell your own story instead of living the one your father wrote for you? The words hit Ivanka like a physical blow. Her whole body seemed to sag. She looked at her father, then back at Jasmine, then down at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I didn't have a choice. The studio went silent. Even Trump seemed to hold his breath. I didn't have a choice, Ivanka repeated, louder this time. I was young, I was scared, and I was told that this was what had to happen, that this was the only way to protect everyone. Trump reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Ivanka, don't. No, she said, her voice breaking. No, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living with this secret. I'm tired of being the perfect daughter, the perfect supporter, the perfect lie. She looked at Jasmine, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. You're right, I've been carrying this for too long, and I'm exhausted. The audience watched in stunned silence. This was no longer just a political scandal. This was a human moment, a daughter finally confronting the truth she'd been hiding, a woman finally breaking free from the chains of deception. Jasmine's eyes glistened with emotion. Thank you for your honesty, Ivanka. I know how hard that was. Ivanka nodded, wiping her tears. What happens now? Now, Jasmine said, you get to decide. You get to tell your story on your terms. You get to live your truth instead of someone else's version of it. Trump stood up abruptly, his chair clattering to the floor. This interview is over. We're done here, he turned to the host. Cut the cameras now. But the host didn't move. The producers didn't move. The cameras kept rolling. Mr. Trump, the host said carefully, with all due respect, I think the audience deserves to hear more. I don't care what the audience deserves, Trump shouted. This is my family, my life, and you've all turned it into a three-ring circus. He grabbed Ivanka's arm, trying to pull her up from her seat. Come on, we're leaving. But Ivanka didn't move. She looked up at him, her eyes red but determined. I'm not going. What? I'm not going, she repeated, her voice stronger now. I'm staying. I'm going to finish this conversation. I'm going to tell the truth. Trump stared at her, his expression a mix of shock, betrayal, and fury. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to regret this. Maybe, Ivanka said, her voice steady despite the tears. But at least I'll be able to live with myself. Trump looked around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, at Jasmine, and seemed to realize that he'd lost, completely and utterly lost. His carefully constructed image, his perfect family narrative, his control over the situation, all of it had crumbled in the span of one interview. Without another word, he turned and walked off the stage. His footsteps echoed through the silent studio. The cameras followed him until he disappeared through the exit, leaving Ivanka and Jasmine sitting across from each other. The host cleared his throat. Miss Trump, are you okay? Ivanka took a deep breath, wiping her eyes one last time. No, but I will be. She looked at Jasmine, a small, sad smile crossing her face. Thank you. I don't know if I should be thanking you, but thank you. Jasmine nodded. You're braver than you think. The audience erupted into applause again, this time even louder than before. They weren't applauding the scandal or the revelation. They were applauding Ivanka's courage, her honesty, her decision to finally break free. If you were in Ivanka's position, if you had been carrying a secret this heavy for years, would you have done what she did? Would you have chosen truth over comfort? Let me know in the comments. The studio lights felt different now, less harsh, less judgmental. The chaos had settled into a strange calm, like the eye of a storm. Ivanka sat straighter in her chair, her tears drying, her breathing steadier. Jasmine watched her carefully, giving her space to process, to think, to feel. The host, sensing the shift in energy, decided to continue. Ivanka, if you're willing, I think a lot of people watching would like to understand more. How did this happen? How did this secret stay hidden for so long? Ivanka looked down at her hands, then back up at the camera. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. It started when I was younger than Barron is now, she began. I was told that certain things had to happen a certain way, that the family's image was more important than individual truth, that we were public figures, and public figures had to maintain a certain facade. She paused, collecting herself. I didn't understand it all at the time. I just knew that I had to do what I was told, that I had to keep the secret, that if I didn't, everything would fall apart. And you believed that? The host asked gently. I was a child, Ivanka said, her voice cracking slightly. What else was I supposed to believe? Jasmine leaned forward. Ivanka, I want to ask you something, and please know that you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But do you think your father understood the weight of what he was asking you to carry? Ivanka was silent for a long moment. The audience waited, barely breathing. I think, she finally said, he understood. But I also think he believed it was necessary, that it was the only way to protect the family, to protect his political future, to protect everything. And now, Jasmine asked, now that the truth is out, how do you feel? Ivanka's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't tears of shame or fear. They were tears of relief. I feel, she whispered, like I can finally breathe. The audience's collective gasp was audible. Some people were crying, others were shaking their heads in disbelief. But everyone was listening. Everyone was present for this moment. Jasmine reached across the table, offering her hand. Ivanka looked at it for a moment, then took it. The gesture was simple, but it spoke volumes. Two women on opposite sides of this revelation, finding common ground in the pursuit of truth. The documents I presented tonight, Jasmine said, addressing the camera, are available for verification. I've submitted copies to multiple news organizations, fact-checkers, and legal experts. This isn't speculation. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is verifiable truth. She squeezed Ivanka's hand gently before releasing it. And I want to be clear about something else. My goal here wasn't to destroy the Trump family. My goal was to hold power accountable. Because when people in positions of authority lie about fundamental aspects of their lives, it erodes public trust. It makes it harder for honest leaders to be believed. It damages our democracy. The host nodded thoughtfully. There are going to be legal implications from this, aren't there? Absolutely, Jasmine confirmed. Questions about inheritance, custody arrangements that may have been based on false information, potential tax fraud, misrepresentation on legal documents. The list goes on. This revelation opens up a Pandora's box of legal questions that will need to be addressed. Ivanka closed her eyes, the weight of those words hitting her. I didn't think about all of that. You were protecting yourself, Jasmine said kindly. That's not a crime. The crime was forcing you to carry this secret in the first place. The host turned to Ivanka. What do you plan to do now? After tonight? Ivanka took a deep breath. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I know I can't go back to pretending. I can't go back to the lie. She looked directly into the camera, addressing the millions of people watching. To everyone who trusted our family, who believed in the image we presented. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the deception. I'm sorry for the lies. And I'm sorry it took this long for the truth to come out. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. The audience sat in respectful silence, absorbing her words. Jasmine spoke again, her voice strong and clear. This is what accountability looks like, not defensiveness, not denial, not attacks on the messenger, but honest acknowledgement of the truth, no matter how painful. She turned to the camera one more time. To everyone watching at home, I want you to remember this moment. Remember what it looks like when someone chooses truth over comfort. Remember what it looks like when power is finally held accountable, and demand it from every leader who asks for your trust. The applause started slowly, then built into a crescendo. It went on for over a minute, wave after wave of it, until the host finally had to signal for quiet. We're going to take a short break, he said, his voice thick with emotion. When we come back, we'll open the floor to audience questions. I have a feeling there are many. The cameras cut to commercial, but the energy in the studio remained electric. People were on their feet, talking, crying, processing what they'd just witnessed. Ivanka sat quietly, staring at her hands, while Jasmine gathered her documents back into the folder. When the cameras came back on, the host addressed the audience. We have time for a few questions. Please, if you have something to ask, raise your hand. Dozens of hands shot up instantly. A woman in the front row was selected first. She stood, her voice shaking slightly. Miss Crockett, how did you get access to these documents? Weren't they sealed? Jasmine nodded. Some were sealed, yes, but others were public record, just buried under layers of bureaucracy and misfiling. It took months of research, cross-referencing, and legal requests to piece together the full picture. But once I had enough pieces, the pattern became clear. Another hand went up, a middle-aged man near the back. Ivanka, do you blame your father for this? Ivanka hesitated. I'm working through my feelings about everything. It's complicated, he's still my father, but yes, there's anger, there's hurt, there's a lot I need to process. A young woman in the middle raised her hand next. Miss Crockett, aren't you worried about the legal consequences of exposing this? The Trump family has resources. They could sue you into oblivion. Jasmine smiled slightly. They could try, but truth is a defense against defamation. Everything I've presented tonight is documented, verified, and true. I'm prepared for whatever legal battles may come. The questions continued, each one pulling back another layer of the story. How long had Jasmine known? Why did she wait until now? What would this mean for Trump's political future? How would this affect Barron? That last question made Ivanka flinch visibly. Barron is innocent in all of this, she said firmly. He's a child who deserves privacy and protection. Whatever happens going forward, I want to make sure he's shielded from as much of this as possible. Jasmine nodded in agreement. I think we can all agree that Barron's well-being should be the priority. He didn't ask for any of this. An older gentleman in the back stood. Mr. Trump left the stage earlier. Do you think he'll respond to these allegations? Oh, he'll respond, Jasmine said with certainty. The question is how. Will he continue to deny and deflect, or will he finally acknowledge the truth? Time will tell. The host checked his watch. We have time for one more question. A woman in her 30s stood, her voice clear and strong. Ivanka, what message do you have for other people who are carrying secrets they were forced to keep? People who are living lies to protect someone else? Ivanka's eyes welled up again. She took a moment to compose herself before answering. I would say, she began slowly, that your truth matters more than someone else's comfort. I know how hard it is to speak up. I know how scary it is to break free from the narrative you've been living. But I also know now that carrying that secret will destroy you from the inside if you let it. She paused, her voice growing stronger. You deserve to live an authentic life. You deserve to be free from the burden of lies. And no matter how powerful the person is who asked you to keep that secret, no matter how much you love them or fear them, your well-being matters more. The audience erupted into applause once again. Several people were openly crying. The emotion in the room was overwhelming. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in this story, and share your thoughts in the comments. Was it Jasmine's courage, Ivanka's breakthrough, or something else entirely? The host waited for the applause to die down before speaking. I think I speak for everyone when I say that this has been one of the most extraordinary broadcasts in television history. Miss Crockett, Miss Trump, thank you both for your honesty, your courage, and your willingness to have this difficult conversation in such a public forum. Jasmine nodded graciously. Ivanka managed a small smile. We're going to wrap up for tonight, the host continued. But I have a feeling this conversation is far from over. The documents presented here will be analyzed, verified, and discussed for weeks, if not months, to come. The implications are enormous. He turned to the camera for his closing remarks. For those watching at home, I encourage you to think critically about what you've witnessed tonight, about truth, about power, about the secrets we keep and the reasons we keep them. This isn't just about one family, it's about all of us. As the show's closing music began to play softly in the background, Jasmine stood and extended her hand. To Ivanka one more time. This time, Ivanka took it immediately, standing to face her. Thank you, Ivanka said quietly so only Jasmine could hear. I know you don't need my thanks, but thank you. Jasmine squeezed her hand. You're going to be okay. It won't be easy, but you're going to be okay. They released hands, and both women walked off the stage together, not as adversaries, but as two people who had just experienced something profound and life-changing. The cameras stayed on them until they disappeared into the wings, then panned back to the stunned audience, many of whom were still processing what they'd witnessed. Outside the studio, news vans were already lining up. Reporters were frantically typing stories on their phones. Social media was exploding with reactions, hot takes, think pieces, and conspiracy theories. The story was already going viral, spreading across the internet like wildfire. Trump, watching from his car as it sped away from the studio, stared at his phone. Notifications were flooding in, thousands of them. Messages from allies, attacks from enemies, questions from the media. His team was already drafting statements, planning legal strategies, preparing for the firestorm. But in that moment, sitting alone in the back of his car, Trump felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Powerless. Back in the studio, the audience was slowly filing out, talking in hushed tones, replaying the moments they'd just witnessed. The host sat at his desk, his head in his hands, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened on his show. The producers were already on the phone with network executives, legal teams, and public relations experts. This story was going to dominate the news cycle for weeks, possibly months. And they were at the center of it. Jasmine, in her dressing room, sat quietly for a moment, letting the adrenaline wear off. She'd done what she came to do. The truth was out. The documents were public. There was no going back now. Her phone buzzed with a text from her legal team. Congratulations and buckle up, this is just the beginning. She smiled slightly. She knew they were right. The legal battles, the media scrutiny, the potential threats, it was all coming. But she was ready. She'd been ready for this moment her entire career. Ivanka, in another dressing room down the hall, sat staring at her own reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red, but there was something different in her expression. Something lighter. The weight she'd been carrying for so long had been lifted, and despite the chaos that was surely coming, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Her phone was ringing non-stop, calls from family, friends, lawyers, reporters. But she ignored them all. For just a few more minutes, she wanted to sit in this moment of truth, this moment of release. Outside, the night sky was clear and filled with stars. The city buzzed with energy, completely unaware that everything had just changed. That the story they thought they knew about one of the most powerful families in America had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. As news of the broadcast spread, people gathered around their televisions, their computers, their phones, watching clips, reading transcripts, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Think pieces were already being written. Legal experts were being interviewed. Political analysts were predicting the fallout. But amidst all the noise, all the speculation, all the hot takes, one thing remained clear. The truth once revealed cannot be hidden again. Jasmine had known this. It's why she'd been so methodical, so careful, so thorough in her research. She'd known that once the secret was out, there would be no putting it back. And she'd been willing to face the consequences because she believed deeply and fundamentally that the truth mattered more than comfort, more than image, more than power. As the night wore on and the story continued to spread across the globe, one question lingered in the minds of millions. What happens next? For Trump, it meant facing the biggest scandal of his life. For Ivanka, it meant rebuilding her life on a foundation of truth instead of lies. For Jasmine, it meant continuing the fight for accountability, knowing that this was just one battle in a much larger war. But for the American people, it meant something else entirely. It meant a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, no matter how famous, no matter how convincing, is above the truth. It meant a reminder that secrets, no matter how well hidden, eventually come to light. And it meant a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to look away when uncomfortable truths are revealed. The studio was empty now, the lights dimmed, the cameras off. But the impact of what had happened there would echo for years to come. It would change laws, it would change policies, it would change the way people thought about power, about accountability, about truth. And it had all started with one woman, armed with nothing but documents and conviction, asking a question that no one else had dared to ask. Why don't you tell them who Barron's real mother is? That question had opened a door that could never be closed, and on the other side of that door was a truth that would reshape everything. As the last staff members locked up the studio and headed home, the city continued to buzz with the news. Tomorrow, the world would wake up to headlines they never expected. Tomorrow, the analysis and debate would intensify. Tomorrow, the legal battles would begin. But tonight, in this moment, the truth stood alone, stark, undeniable, unchangeable. And that, perhaps, was the most powerful thing of all. Here at Celebrity Chronicles, we believe in bringing you the stories that matter, the stories that challenge power, the stories that demand truth. What you just witnessed wasn't just entertainment. It was a moment of accountability that will be studied, debated, and remembered for generations. Jasmine Crockett showed us what courage looks like. Ivanka Trump showed us what liberation looks like. And together they showed us that no secret is too big to expose when the stakes are this high. But now, I want to hear from you. What did you think about this incredible confrontation? Was Jasmine right to expose this secret on live television? Or should some family matters remain private? Do you think Ivanka made the right choice by finally telling her truth? And what do you think will happen next to the Trump family after this bombshell revelation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your perspective matters to this community. If this story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, or made you question what you thought you knew, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps us bring you more stories like this, stories that don't shy away from difficult truths, stories that hold power accountable. And if you're not already subscribed to Celebrity Chronicles, now's the perfect time. We're here every week with stories that go beyond the headlines, stories that dig deeper, stories that matter. Click that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, someone who believes in accountability, someone who understands that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always worth pursuing. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and thank you for caring enough about truth to spend your time with us today. This is Celebrity Chronicles, and we'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep questioning, keep seeking truth, and never be afraid to speak up when power tries to silence you.